I'm Sarah Zukowski, and this is my Brave New World book review. This novel is all about a society, and the society's main goal is to keep peace and never have another war, but the reader learns that this might hurt other things in terms of quality of life. So starting off with Bernard Marx, he doesn't really fit into society because from the time that they're conceived in test tubes, and they're made to look a certain way, and when they become toddlers they're trained to act a certain way, and Bernard tries to act the right way, but he's never going to fit in because he's too small and short, so he's very judged and kind of an outcast. Next is John the Savage. He actually didn't grow up in the society. He grew up on a reserve where they have religion and not the same beliefs as the society. And he comes in as an outsider and kind of give knowledge to Bernard and Helmholtz. So going on with Helmholtz, he is like Bernard because he doesn't fit in, but he doesn't fit in for a different reason. He's too good. He's too strong. He's too smart for his job, and that's why he doesn't fit in. But other people do like him because of his looks and brain. Next, we have Lenina Crow. She is like the poster child for society. She looks the exact way she's supposed to and acts the way she's supposed to. So, for the conflict of the story, Bernard and Helmholtz begin to question society because both of them do not fit in. And then, when Bernard no longer agrees with society and meets someone from the reserve, John, his whole perspective on life begins to change. But is this change enough to keep him from wanting to fit into society? So now for the overview of the book. This novel mentions many difficult subjects such as substance abuse, morality, and isolation. Although the book was entertaining, it struggled to do more than mention each of these subjects. The novel also failed to truly develop any character, and there were many times where as a reader it was impossible to root for anyone. A quote that really stuck out to me as I was reading was that all unconditioning aims at that, making people like their inescapable social destiny. So to me, this really went back to how conditioning affected their society. And in my opinion, the way conditioning affected their society was it made them not be able to feel. And this leads me to the thesis statement, which is that true unconditional happiness does not exist, because to feel happy all the time is to feel nothing. And the novel really goes into this with the character Lenina, and when someone is really trying to be true and honest with their feelings with her, she can't even comprehend what that means because she's been conditioned to, not love and to not feel. The book reviewer, Eamon, also went into this idea, and he talks about how in the society where everyone is seemingly happy all the time, something has to give. And he talks about how they gave up their freedom. They're unable to really feel for themselves and to think for themselves because they've been conditioned so much at such a young age. So now on a more positive note, moving to the prose. The imagery of this utopia that the author created was really beautiful and something I could really imagine in my head. I enjoyed that the novel wasn't the usual structure a book might follow, and then I was excited that there were two main characters, so there was a lot more to focus on rather than there just being one. Some cons for this book were that there was a lot of scientific jargon, and I don't think it would be understood by the typical reader, so there was just so many words that just went right over my head. And then another con is that certain points of the book, it felt very slow and like the plot wasn't developing and nothing was happening. And then lastly, when I'm reading, I really like to be inspired by the characters, but even the protagonist in this book did not inspire me in any way. For potentially offensive content, there's 3 big issues. There are scenes of domestic abuse, promiscuity is heavily featured, and there is substance abuse. So now moving on to my response to the book reviewer. The first quote I picked out was, "Overall, Brave New World is a scary depiction of what could soon be our future." And Eamon said this on page 2. And I have to disagree with this. I just think in our world, people are used to such freedom that this would never be able to happen because people would be so against it. The next quote I'm going to be analyzing is, Brave New World explores the negatives of an ostensibly successful world in which everyone appears to be content and satisfied, with excessive carnal pleasures, yet really this stability is only achieved by sacrificing freedom in its true sense and the idea of personal responsibility. I think the character John the Savage really understood that point, and there's a specific example on page 212. But do you like being slaves, the Savage was saying as they entered the hospital. His face was flushed, his eyes bright with ardor and indignation. Do you like being babies? Yes, babies, mulling and puking. As you can see from this quote, he understands that in order to have this where everyone is seemingly happy, that they no longer have freedom. The last quote that I chose was Huxley's trying to convey the idea that technology does not have the power to save us successfully, and I'm on the fence with this one. I don't think it's that technology doesn't have the power to save us. I think the problem is the people in control of technology. In the novel on page 34, it says that there are only 10 world controllers, and I think the problem is what they did with the technology, and we see from conditioning there's so many ideas that seem so off to us. And one quote that especially stuck out to me was on page 205. Linda is dying, John's mother, and the quote says, "The look she gave him was charged with an unspeakable terror." With terror, and it seemed to him reproach. And I think in this quote, she's realizing what soma is, and that death is scary and it's not a pleasant experience like they're used to. Death is something that they shouldn't have been conditioned to think was a happy, joyous time, but rather a time that is scary and a time of change. In conclusion, Brave New World is a book I don't recommend because it is depressing and mentions several topics but doesn't fully develop any of them. Overall, I would give this book 3 stars because I was able to finish it, but I was never on the edge of my seat and I never got invested in any of the characters' stories.